Hi Year 7, today what we're learning about is changing fractions to decimals. So what I'd like you to do is have a go at these quick questions. You're going to have to write the fractions, the first three fractions as a decimal and then simplify the other three fractions. So pause the video and have about a minute and a half to answer these. Okay, so for the first one as a decimal 3/10, we write that as 0.3. Then for 7 over 100, you should have gotten 0.07. And for 196 over 100, you should have gotten 1.96. To simplify these fractions, 16 over 2, 2 goes into 16 8 times. 6 over 3, 3 goes into 6 2 times, and 120 over 10, 10 goes into 120 12 times. What we're going to do now is we're going to look at writing decimals in expanded form. So if we were to write 734.625 in expanded notation, what we have is we have 7 hundredths, 3 tens, 4 units, 6 tenths, 2 hundredths, and 5 1,000ths. So in expanded notation, what this looks like is 7 lots of 100 plus 3 lots of 10 plus 4 lots of 1 plus 6 lots of 1 over 10 plus 2 lots of 1 over 100 plus 5 lots of 1 over 1,000. What I'd like you guys to do now is to write the following questions in expanded notation. So pause this video and have a go at these 3 questions on your whiteboards. You've got about 2 minutes. Okay, so for writing these in expanded notation, you could have used the diagram over here in order to help you out to do these. So the first one is to write 7.342 in expanded notation. So we have 7 lots of 1 plus 3 lots of 1 over 10 plus 4 lots of 1 over 100 plus 2 lots of 1 over 1,000. Oops, sorry. For the next one, we want to write 30.75 in expanded notation. So we have 3 lots of 10 plus 0 lots of 1, or you could have left that out, plus 7 lots of 1 over 10 plus 5 lots of 1 over 100. And lucky last, to write 482.375 in expanded notation, we have 4 lots of 100 plus 8 lots of 10 plus 2 lots of 1 plus 3 lots of 1 over 10 plus 7 lots of 1 over 100 plus 5 lots of 1 over 1,000. Hope you got those all correct. What we're going to look at now is how we actually change a fraction to a decimal. So if fractions are written as a tenth, a hundredth, or a thousandth, etc., we can change it to a decimal by writing the last digit of the numerator in the matching place value column, just like what we sort of did with some of those quick questions originally. So if we were to change 37 over 1,000, what we do is we have it over 1,000, so we put the last digit in the 1,000 column. So we put our 7 in our 1,000 column, and our 3 goes into our 100th column, and then we put zeros in the other 2 places before that. This means that our answer is 0.037. So 37 over 1,000 as a decimal is 0.037. For part B, if we were to change 451 over 100, we need to put that last digit of 1 in that 1 over 100 column, then our 5 in our 1 over 10 column, and then our 4 goes in our 1 column. Because if we're saying 451 over 100, we're saying how many times does 100 go into 451? So we know it goes 4 times, and then we just have that 0.51 remainder. So our decimal for 451 over 100 is 4.51. Now, with our last one here, we have 16 over 5. You can see that I have written its equivalent fraction to be 32 over 10. So it's really important that we change fractions that do not have a denominator of 1,000, 100, or 10 to be one of these values. How I got from the denominator of 5 to 10 is just multiplying 5 by 2, and whatever I do to the denominator, I have to do to the numerator, so I multiplied 16 by 2. So now I have 32 over 10, so I can put my 2 in the 10th column, 1 over 10, and then my 3 goes in the 1s column. So then my decimal is just 3.2 for 16 over 5, or the equivalent fraction of 32 over 10. Now we're going to look at how to change a fraction to a decimal when we do not have a denominator of 10, 100, 1,000, or something that can make it up to that. So to change any fraction to a decimal, we divide the numerator by the denominator. So if we have 3/4, it equals 3 divided by 4, or we can write it as 3 divided by 4 in a division algorithm, like so. We are going to have to, if we do this, have to put some decimal places of zeros after, which we have looked at when we were dividing decimals by decimals. So what we're going to do is we're going to have a go at changing these fractions to decimals. You might want to have a go at doing it while I'm doing it on the screen. I'm not going to pause the video though for you to do it. So if we were to change these fractions to decimals, we have 3/4 as our first one. So we go, how many times does 4 go into 3? Like so. So 4 goes into 3 0 times. We technically have a decimal point after a whole number. So we write 0.0 and we carry our 3 as our remainder, and our decimal point goes up the top as well because we've run into a decimal point. We then say how many times does 4 go into 30? Now 4 goes into 37 times because 4 times 7 is 28, and we have a remainder of 2. So we put another 0 and a 2 there. We then need to say how many times does 4 go into 20, which is 5 times. So that means that our fraction of 3/4 as a decimal is 0.75. Now, if we were to change 1 and 5/8 as a fraction to a decimal, what we have to do is we have to make this an improper fraction first. So to make this an improper fraction, we multiply the whole number by the denominator plus the numerator and put it all over that denominator of 8. So we have 1 times 8 plus 5 over 8. So 1 times 8 is 8. 8 plus 5 is 13 over our denominator of 8. So now we're saying how many times does 8 go into 13? So we need to draw ourselves up a nice long division algorithm like so and put that decimal place after that whole number of 13. Now 8 goes into 1 0 times, carry the 1. Now 8 goes into 13 once, and we have a remainder of 5. So we put our 5 remainder here above a 0. We've run into our decimal point, so we need to put our decimal point in our answer as well. Then we need to say how many times does 8 go into 50? Now 8 lots of 6 is 48. So 8 goes into 56 times with a remainder of 2. We then need to say how many times does 8 go into 20? Now 8 goes into 22 times, as 8 times 2 is 16 with a remainder of 4. Put another 0 Now, how many times does 8 go into 40? It goes 5 times with no remainder. So that means that 1 5/8 as a decimal is 1.625. Lucky last, we're going to look at changing the fraction of 5/6 to a decimal. So we are saying how many times does 6 go into 5? So what we need to do is 6 goes into 5 0 times, and then we have run into our decimal point because we have a decimal behind our whole number. So then we need to put our remainder of 5 above 0, which says how many times does 6 go into 50? Now 6 times 8 is 48. So 6 goes into 58 times with a remainder of 2. Now how many times does 6 go into 20? 6 goes into 20 3 times, as 6 times 20 is 18, so we have a remainder of 2. Now how many times does 6 go into 20? 6 goes into 20 3 times, because 6 times 3 is 18 with a remainder of 2. Now how many times does 6 go into 20? 6 goes into 20 3 times, because 6 times 3 is 18, so we'll have a remainder of 2. So all that's going to happen is this is going to continue on, and what we call this when this continues on is a repeating decimal. Let's have a little bit of a look into what a repeating decimal is. So terminating or repeating decimals. Fractions can be either written as terminating or repeating decimals. So a terminating decimal comes to a definite end, such as 3.6, 0.000125, or 0.75. However, a repeating or recurring decimal does not come to an end, but forms a pattern that is repeated indefinitely forever. To show that a set of digits is repeated, we write a dot over the first and the last repeating digits, such as 0.666 repeater is just equal to 0.6 with a dot above it. 1.272727, we can see here that the 2 repeats, but so does the 7. So it is written as 1.2 repeater, 7 repeater, and that dot stands for that it's repeating. In the number 32.4608, we can see that the 6 is repeating, the 0 is repeating, and that also the 8 is repeating. So what we do is we write a dot over the first and the last of the repeating digits. So the 6 is our first repeating digit, and the 8 is our last repeating digit. What you guys are going to have a go at doing now is your teacher that you have there today will be handing out a worksheet. I want you to do this worksheet first of changing a decimal to a fraction. The first couple of questions are asking, is each decimal terminating or repeating? Write these repeating decimals in a shorter way. You're then going to have a go at writing the fractions as a decimal by first filling in the table, and then you're going to change these decimals by dividing the numerator by the denominator, just like what I did in those previous examples. Then the backside of the worksheet is getting you to change fractions to decimals by using those skills. So the first column, you need to change these fractions to decimals, make sure there are no end zeros, okay? And then you're going to, down the bottom, reverse and change these decimals to fractions, which we have done. You're then going to use division to change these fractions to decimals, and then the last column is convert these fractions, which will be recurring to decimals. Just a little tip for some of these that get a little bit tricky, such as how many times does 20 go into 3? What you can do is, for this one, you can change it by dividing both the top and the bottom by 10. Okay, so the opposite of what we did last lesson. And what you can do is say how many times does 2 go into 0.3? And then the same one for 30, you can divide both the top and the bottom by 10. And oops, that's not 10, that's 0. And then you can say how many times does 4 go into 0.7. Just to make those ones a little bit easier for you, you may find a different trick by doing those as well. Good luck.